Is the risk of another Korean War higher than ever? The possibility of a war on the Korean Peninsula is once again in the spotlight. Robert Manning, a distinguished fellow at the Stimson Center, recently argued that the risk of conflict is the highest it has been since the 1950-53 Korean War. While the timelines of this assessment is understandable, it is necessary to approach such claims with caution. The argument that the risk of war has escalated sharply is accurate in some respects and exaggerated in others. Tensions on the Korean Peninsula have been a constant for decades, and while vigilance is crucial, alarmist conclusion can distort the reality. This distortion is not merely theoretical. It has real-world implications, particularly for South Korea's national image and economic stability. Therefore, a more careful analysis is required. The Korean Peninsula has faced numerous military tensions and crises since the end of the Korean War in 1953. Some have indeed brought the region to the brink of conflict. For instance, in January 1968, North Korea sent 31 Special Forces troops to assassinate the President Park. Of the North Korean troops, 29 were killed, one went missing, and one was captured. Although the mission failed, it was followed by the seizure of the U.S. intelligence ship USS Pueblo and a series of other aggressive actions, including the dispatching of 120 troops deep into South Korean territory later that year. South Korean forces engaged in a sweeping operation, resulting in the deaths of 113 of the North Koreans and 61 South Korean soldiers, police officers, and civilians, essentially a small-scale war. In 1976, the Panmunjom Exodus murder incident brought South Korea, the U.S., and North Korea dangerously closer to war, with Washington mobilizing reinforcement and bombers in response to the killing of 2 U.S. officers by North Korean soldiers. The situation de-escalated only after Kim Il-sung issued an unprecedented apology. In May 1994, the post-North Korean nuclear crisis saw the U.S. consider a surgical strike on the North's nuclear facilities. A plan ultimately shelved through diplomatic negotiation involving former U.S. President Jimmy Carter. More recently, in 2010, North Korea shelled the island of Yeonpyeong-do, killing 4 South Koreans, and again war seemed imminent. South Korea was prepared to retaliate strongly, but U.S. intervention prevented a direct military confrontation. Each of these instances illustrates the ongoing volatility of the peninsula, but also demonstrate a consistent pattern. High tensions do not necessarily lead to war. Recent events, while concerning, are not exceptional in this context. Kim Jong-un's current campaign is provocation against the South is often cited as evidence that the risk of a war is more significant than ever. However, this assessment needs perspective. On March 2013, for example, Kim Jong-un threatened to turn Washington, D.C. into a sea of fire and ordered the North Korean military to be ready for war. In 2015, he issued a 72-hour ultimatum to the South, demanding concession or threatening serious consequences. This past provocation suggests that while Kim's rhetoric this year is aggressive, it is not without the precedent. The current situation remains within the realm of what we have seen before, a pattern of escalation and de-escalation. As the coming week, it is possible that North Korea may increase the level of provocation. However, this does not necessarily indicate that war is imminent. Instead, it may represent a strategic pattern of brinkmanship to gain leverage, a hallmark of North Korean behavior for decades. Analyzing the risk of war on the Korean Peninsula cannot focus solely on North Korea. The policies of South Korea, the United States, and China are equally important. Under the current Yoon administration, South Korea has taken a markedly more hawkish stance toward North Korea in a significant departure from the engagement-oriented policies of the previous administration. This shift has undoubtedly contributed to rising tension, as the Yoon government has prioritized deterrence and military readiness over dialogue. While it is undeniable that the risk of conflict on the Korean Peninsula exists, the claim that it is higher than at any point since 1950 is an exaggeration. Military experts may engage in war-gaming scenarios, but we must recognize the difference between hypothetical risk assessment and the realities on the ground. Alarmist prediction can have unintended consequences. Overstating the danger of war can negatively impact South Korea's national image, deterring international investment and damaging economic prospects. The exaggeration might deceive the people of South Korea, leading the country to draw an illusory conclusion. South Korea is more than a flashpoint for conflict. It is a vibrant, modern economy, and alarmist narratives threaten to overshadow this reality. In conclusion, while it is essential to remain vigilant, it is equally important to avoid distorting the actual level of risk. Balanced and nuanced analysis, rather than alarming, should guide our understanding of the evolving situation on the Korean Peninsula. Scholars and policymakers alike must consider the broader historical, geopolitical, and strategic context before concluding that the risk of war is at an all-time high. Mischaracterizing the situation not only distorts the reality, but also risks undermining South Korea's position as a prosperous and stable nation.